All right, good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm excited to have Marilyn King with Family Counseling Center, Inc., down in Kennett, Missouri, with us. Welcome, Marilyn.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you tell the folks watching a little bit about what your position is there at FCC?
Well, I just finished up the 5-year Partnership for Success grant that we had down here in the southeast part of the state. But I'm a prevention specialist, so I work with communities and coalitions, agencies, just about anybody that'll have me, schools, to prevent substance use, especially among youth. We kind of focus on maybe catching it before it's too late, how we like to look at it.
Absolutely, perfect. So, a few weeks ago, I had on Margot
Right?
from First Call, and she talked about asset building and the 40 developmental assets. And you have actually been through a training that takes that a next step, and it's called Getting Relationships Right. So, can you tell the folks watching a little bit about that training?
So the Search Institute started back in 1958, actually, with the question of helping young people thrive and what makes them thrive and how can we as adults in their lives help them. And so the 40 developmental assets kind of came out of that question. And then when they got those 40 developmental assets, then they said, well, okay, how do we actually help young people get those assets? What's the ingredient that we really need? And so they've done a lot of research and asked many questions and surveys, and what they came up with was that the most important thing in a child's life is the relationships in a child's life, and in anybody's life, I would add, not just young people. And so then they started saying, okay, let's pinpoint what is a developmental relationship, what that looks like, who's involved, and then they came up with 5 elements that are like the core of any developmental relationship. So let's start with the definition of what is a developmental relationship. It's close connections through which young people discover who they are, gain abilities to shape their own lives, and learn how to interact with and contribute to the world around them. So, in a short form, that would be agency, identity, agency, and community. But those ingredients, and then they said, okay, that's what we think a developmental relationship looks like. Let's take it one step further and break it out into pieces. So, the 5 elements are express care, challenge growth, provide support, share power, and expand possibilities. So then they said, okay, great. We've got that pinpointed. And then what they found is that these relationships are bidirectional, but yet the adult in the relationship takes charge or is the one responsible for making sure that the elements are met. Um, these relationships can be with teachers, parents, mentors, coaches, faith-based leaders, their own siblings. They found they're doing some work now on peer relationships and how important those relationships can be if they're developmental, if they have those elements. So this training, although I've been to a lot of search trainings, this training, the Getting Relationships Right, specifically trained us to facilitate workshops within our own agencies or the coalitions that we work with, but to actually break this out for them and give them tools and ways to put it in practice. It's one thing to see it on a piece of paper and here's the elements, da da. But then, most people think, oh, well, I care about the youth I work with or my kids or, you know, but is caring enough? And what they found is that if you add one, not just one of these elements, but if you actually are very intentional about using more than one. So I want to expand possibilities and offer them opportunities. And of course I care about them too, but that they're much more powerful. And of course, from a prevention standpoint, we want to make sure that we increase protective factors and lower those risk factors. And what they found is that young people that have developmental relationships, the risk factors go down, the protective factors go up. And you kind of think about it and it makes sense. And so this training was specifically to have us give people tools that they can actually use to build those relationships up and to use these 5 elements to make them deeper and richer. And so here at FCC, we're the prevention department, and we're very small compared to the rest of the agency. But we have a lot of clients in the other side, the clinical side of the agency, that have behavioral or emotional problems and slight mental problems, and then of course substance abuse. They're in for treatment. We have inpatient and outpatient. And so we, as the prevention department, offered this training to our youth services employees, our staff here at MCC, here and in Poplar Bluff. We cover a lot of counties down here as far as the clinical side of our work. And so I think it's 2 weeks. I'll have the first training session with 16 or 18 care coordinators, and they are sometimes entry level, sometimes they may not have a credential. And so what we felt as an agency, to change that culture, this would be a great training for them, because a lot of them do work with the young people directly, face to face. Some of them make house visits. They go out to the houses, especially now since we've been in this pandemic. And so that's what we're going to do, is give them this training. I've condensed the 2-day training that we had is to be facilitators into 1 day. And there's some tools like developmental relationships in your development. So there's a lot of reflection on how important relationships are, how important they've been to us through our lives, and through the participants in the trainings. And then also it takes another lens, and we look at the organization. How can they make this part of their continuum of care with the clients that we serve? And so I'm really excited about it. I really got a lot out of it because I'd been through a developmental relationship, kind of an introduction to it all with Search through that grant that I was talking about earlier, but I didn't know the practical things that could be done. So we give them a lot of materials. We give them an activity book that they can use with groups or one-on-one. And also just do some exercises so that everybody kind of gets on the same page. What's a developmental relationship look like? 1 in 5 kids, they did a big survey, Search did, 25,000 young people. And 1 in 5 of those didn't have any developmental relationships in their lives. 1 in 16 had 4 or 5. So there's a big gap. And especially when you look at African Americans or low social economic status, those young people had less by quite a bit. But they also showed the most improvement if you added some to their lives. Sort of like, that's the cool thing about the developmental assets too, is the ones that you can have the most effect with and have the best outcomes are the ones that start out low, and you just add a couple ingredients to their life and you're already interacting with them anyway. They have the best results from having those assets built with them and by having these relationships.
Right. So who would benefit from this training?
I think personally, I would like everybody to have it, but that's just me. I'm a little carried away with it. But like I said, we were doing it with the staff. Now, another group that I worked with this summer when we were just doing virtual trainings, the one I've been talking about, we actually get to do in person and social distance and masks when we're congregated, that kind of thing. But we have a bigger room to do it in. Um, but I feel like it would be great to get in the schools. Some of our coalitions, our community coalitions, I think it would benefit. And just on a personal level, we got a new prevention specialist back in March. She started 2 weeks right before lockdown. And so she didn't get to go out to a lot of trainings like normal, like you would when you first started to get your credentialing and all that. But she has she has a young adult daughter and then one that's a senior in high school. And as she sat in on my trainings that I was giving virtually, she picked up some things. She learned some things, and she has said more than once, oh my goodness, the difference it's made. I thought I was doing a good job of being a parent, but just by changing and shifting my focus a little bit and being more intentional about some of these things, empowering her daughters to make decisions, letting them in on stuff, just having a better relationship because of some of these tools. She says, oh my gosh, it's so different. My 17-year-old, she actually, we like to be together now. And I said, well, that's a teenager for you.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I could see a lot of folks listening being like, I got this relationship thing down. I don't need it. But the fact is that these are just little extra boosters, if
Yes.
you will, on how to connect. And especially like if we talk about teachers who might have a kiddo that might be hard to connect with, these would be great pointers, it sounds like, for them.
Yeah, I think it's great. And I think that when I gave my little mini trainings this summer, I gave it to a group they've started down here. It's connected with the University of Missouri and Columbia, and it's called Parent Link. Mm-hmm. And they started kinship support groups. So specifically for people that are taking care of kids other than their own. So grandparents, aunties, uncles, whatever. And a lot of times informally. Some of them, about 50-50 of them, are actually foster or have adopted the children. And I did some virtual trainings with them on the developmental assets, on the developmental relationships. And, you get so busy with life. And I'm not a parent, so, but I have young people in my life, and we take prevention education into one of the school systems down here, and even applying these things in the classroom when I'm there just for, one class period with each group of kids, and just using them, you really can connect better, because you're showing respect and you're also very intentional about how you go about it. One survey I was reading that they kind of broke it out to 5 important groups that most young people and young teenagers have as parents, of course, or guardians, their siblings, teachers, other youth program directors. There was one other one, I can't remember what. Anyway, they rated how many of these relationships they had with which groups, and then how those 5 elements were played out in those relationships. And the one that surprised me was the teachers. When you think about a teacher, at least when I was going through school, expanding possibilities and providing opportunities, expanding those different cultures, or just opening up the world. And those were rated low by this group of kids that took that survey, that they They might have challenged growth and they might have expressed care. They didn't do real good on sharing power, and they didn't do real good on the challenging growth and expanding possibilities. And I was like, wait a minute, you know, isn't that part of the job kind of thing? And it really does just take a change of focus and kind of be intentional about making sure that and you can't do it all for every kid every time. You can't offer all those 5 things in every relationship. Every relationship's a little different. There's some that are short-term, long-term, lifelong, just fleeting. And so you can't, it's not to put pressure on trying to do more than you realistically can do. And it's really better if young people have more than one person that provides these. The more the better. So if they've got a coach and they've got a teacher and they've got a parent and they've got somebody at church or on the soccer, it really helps to just make sure that they succeed and thrive. That's kind of what Search Institute started out with. Why is it that some kids do thrive?
Right.
And some don't. Can we figure that out and pick it apart? And this is the results of them really trying to figure out what can we do as adults in relationships with young people to make sure that they succeed and become all they can be.
Right. Well, this sounds like a fabulous training, and I'm so glad that you took time to share with us today. And what I will do is when we end, I will drop FCC's contact in the comment section. So if anyone wants to get a hold of you guys, you can, and I'm sure you'll answer any questions.
I will answer questions, and I've got information, and the class that I went to in Cape back in August, the people that were in the class to become the facilitators all worked at the prevention resource centers kind of down in this area. So Poplar Bluff, Cape Girardeau. I don't think we had anybody from Rolla. I think they were going to do another one up there. And so the prevention resource centers for any of this Search Institute training is a great place, because we down here in this corner got the Partnership for Success grant, and this was one of the big components, and it's the sustainable part of that grant where we can actually make some difference out there.
Okay, yeah, and I'll drop the prevention resource centers in the chat too, so people can see it. So again, Marilyn, thank you. I appreciate it. It's great talking to you. Good to see you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.